The Labyrinth of Lilith. The awakening of the goddess, through the veils of the esoteric syncretic alchemy. When we watch the Radishian paths into the underworld, all caused by a snake bite, by a snake as her abductor, we can also see the parallels, the echoes, of it back in other cultures. The things which happened to Radis, that she was taken away from her lover, that she was kept hidden in the underworld, made her more or less the goddess of the underworld, under Hecate, who can be seen as her mother, the goddess of darkness, witches and sorcery, the great Greek goddess of death. Both are linked to Persephone and Proserpina, Roman goddess of the underworld. It is all to illustrate and illuminate the mechanism of hell and death. These two powers are not just negative and evil. They should be put in their right frame. Even when we watch the Christian Greek root texts of the Bible, the Apocalypse, Revelation, the word for sulfur of hell, of the lake of fire, was not just for punishment, but also for healing. It had medical qualities, so even those who were in Christian viewpoint doomed to hell, had a witness and advocate in the Greek root text of this damnation, meaning they would be healed. This led to the more fair viewpoint, that hell could be seen as a purgatory, a period to reach purity. When we prick through the levels of orthodoxy, we come to deeper truths, which might change our viewpoints again, or just refining it, as still all religious material is very useful, when you know the right code of it. It is like a nuclear soul energy, having much potential to lead you through, and the magic is in the combination, with its parallels, where we can find the keys of explanation. In Iroquois myth, we see Radis back as Onatha, the goddess of fertility and harvest, who was abducted to the Iroquois underworld, Hogwe by Hogwadaga, a demon god, who would live on the bottom of the abyss underworld. Onatha was the daughter of the earth goddess, Dinoha. In Aztec myth, we see Radis back as Xochiquetzal, who was abducted to the underworld by the serpent god Tezcatlipoca. It made them more or less goddesses of the underworld. In Jewish myth we see Adam and Eve getting abducted to the underworld, the lower earth, by eating from a demonic fruit. In Aztec myth, this happened to Xochiquetzal, who took blossom from the sacred tree, a flower, and was taken to the underworld by Tezcatlipoca. We do not have to watch this in negative frame, but in Gnostic frame, as a Christic potential, as these are the stages fertility goes through. We are talking about universal harvest principles here, how things are organized, how they are working in nature, and in and throughout the spirit worlds. We have been shown the cycles of eternal life, but in this, we need to find the center of it all. Adam and Eve went through a lot of condemnation, as the scribes of the Jews often put them down as sinners, who had eaten from something which supposed to be forbidden. Adam and Eve became a symbol of regret and guilt to parts of the Jewish community. In Egyptian mythology, however, we see the same sort of figures being put in a much happier light, as they were held as keys to understand and get through the realms of the underworld. Anyway, in many ways, we can compare them with Orpheus and Radis. Behind the abductions, there were gods of the underworld, and goddesses, having their own laws, often deeper and unknown. Hades is the Greek god of the underworld, Pluto the Roman form, connected to Phoebus and Orcus. The Hopi Indians know Mesa as their god of the underworld, holding the tablets of law, and gifted with many Christic characteristics. There are a lot of parallels between him and the Egyptian goddess of law, Mot, in combination with the scribe god Tath. There is also links to Moses, the guide. She has played the part of being his weapon, but she also tempted him, and co-assisted in leading him to the underworld, which some described as his fall, and even the fall of mankind. Xochiquetzal was the mother of Quetzalcoatl, the Aztec Christ, the feathered serpent, who would return at the end of times. She was also his lover, at one point. In Gnostic writings, we see not only Mary as the mother of Christ, but also as his lover, in the form of Mary of Magdalene. Apparently in the underworld, there are different sorts of laws, and Gnostics usually reflect on them. There where the man is the enlightening principle, the woman is the endarkening principle, also taking a lot of knowledge away, in order to bring new knowledge. She is the transformer, and she can be seen as the positive element of hell, as a transformator. The female should be seen as a dark riddle, a cryptic substance, and as essential for the man to return to his source, and to gain eternal life. In the upper world, the male might rule as in an illusion, but in the underworld it is the female who definitely rules as the great goddess. And based on Navajo myth, it is for the woman important to return back to her black cloud. The fall to the underworld is an important returning theme. We see this in the myth of Adam and Eve, and even in the myth of Christ. The difference between Christ and Adam was that for Adam there was no simple resurrection plan. He had to stay in the underworld, the lower earth. From this viewpoint one can view the often bloody Old Testament of Jewish myth as a book about the underworld, and not necessarily as a historic book, or a book about material life. Often the stories were derived from earlier cultures, and these writings literally had to do with myth and the underworld. From Iroquois perspective, Adam and Eve entered Hogway, the underworld where overwhelming fear, guilt, regret, despair and failure ruled, because the demon god, Dagahogdaga, had called them. Onatha was in that sense their Eve, and became more or less the queen of the underworld. In this sense Christ has also visited this world, but Adam stayed much longer, together with Eve. Further on, David can be seen as a war god, defeating the enemies in the underworld, and same counts for Moses. They all have their Native American parallels, and sources where they have been derived from. In Aztec myth, the underworld was the womb of Xochiquetzal, where Kotlik, the Aztec Mother Earth, devoured everything which lived. It was a drawing, calling force, like the voice of Hecate, for initiation in hell, the original primeval place of transformation. Hellfire is in the Greek root texts the same fire as the fire of the Holy Spirit, and hell is a tool in her hands to purify the saints. It is something we all have to go through, and in ancient European myth hell was the guide of the dead, together with her dog. This is why we have to search for Mother Hell, who was also called Hall, and had in ancient fairy tale a positive function as the tester of hearts and rewarder of the good. In that sense also the good go to hell to become even better, and it is their reward, so it should be viewed as an even more important and more beautiful place than heaven. For Adam it was a reward when he slided into hell, although it was entitled as his damnation. It was an honor for him to enter Hogway, the place beyond paradise, although he sunk down in regret, guilt, and failure. He had to cover himself, as he felt ashamed, and partly a miserable life was waiting for him, but this was for his initiation in the deeper laws of existence, the hidden ones. This is why the Aztecs worship the gods of duality, and there is a world beyond myth. It only has meaning as cryptic art, as soul technology. A woman became in the New Testament Jesus, also called the morning star, falls out of heaven, and comes in his crucifixion period, under the wrath of God, as in a rejection by Jewish law, both on earth and in the heavens. This is why in depth Jesus is Lucifer, and in the New Testamentic texts, it is also written, that at one point Jesus turns into Satan and becomes sin, and by this, he gains the victory, which results in his resurrection, and his acceptance by Roman Catholic law, which is a form of Neo-Hebraism, having its power by many pagan items put together, by which the Roman Empire became big semi-syncretism. All this is saying that there has to be a fall, there has to be a syncretism of some sort, in order to resurrect, and become the savior of many. Again we see the importance of the depths of dualism. In Aztec myth Tezcatlipoca can be compared with Lucifer. Even more important in this context is the story of Adam and Eve, as now this fall gets female qualities, in order to bring us back to the Mother God, the source of all fertility. As we have seen, she can be found in the underworld. In the pre-Pradizan Naka myths about the lower underworlds, it is often about the great goddess of hunt, and her attributes are fear, guilt, scorn, strife, despair, hunger, failure, lies, regret and remorse. In this, she is the trickster goddess. But this is nothing but the security for her kingdom, as in the cryptic complexity of all things. It is devoted to secure a tight path of initiations into her existence. In our dissension we will find that in the higher underworlds, it is much about snakes, and in the lower underworld, where the Great Mother thrones, it is more about hyenas. There are many rituals to get from snake energy to hyena energy. The serpent is a mighty veil in the underworld where every shaman has to go through in order to awaken his deeper powers. The mark of the Great Mother can only be received in great fear, as fear is a mighty guide for the shaman to get into the deeper frequencies of the underworld. Fear can also be seen as one of the legs of the divine demon hyena. Fear is a hormonal drug to cause visions, and is a sense of security. The other legs are guilt, remorse and sin. This is all to keep the duality alive, the art, which is the energy of eternity. You have to be in the claws of something to preserve yourself, to be transformed, and to reach a strength to reach eternity. In this sense hell is the only path to eternity. The heart of the hyena is hunger, and its mouth is strife. Strife is also the root meaning of the word daemon, as in divider, which is an essential force in organizing and analyzing, so in a sense, a demon is a hyena's mouth. The neck or spine of the hyena is scorn, which is also an important Christic element, as scorn is to expand syncretism. In this, the parts of the hyena form the pillars of hell. Shamans who attempt to enter hell can get headaches because of these pressures, but they should understand that these headaches are actually tuning them into the frequencies of hell. In the rituals, art of becoming clean, it is very important to become unclean first, all for the sake of syncretism. Uncleanness was necessary to get rid of false gods, as in false cleaning systems, and it was important to plug into other frequencies to get into contact with beings from another plane, as a form of getting information. In Aztec myth, this duality was manifested through Tlazolteotl, who was a justice goddess, who not only forgave sin, but also inspired sin. It is therefore of undescribable importance, also to become guilty, in our process of initiation. Tlazolteotl is the mother of Xochiquetzal. There are several veils of guilt shamans, and Gnostics have to go through in order to reach places. This is standard, none of them can really Okpanitztli was the announcer of the war season, and war was on one line with birth-giving. Tlazolteotl was also known for preparing warriors for battle in the underworld, where also war captives were sacrificed to her. In her role as war goddess, and as the one with the two faces, she can also be compared with David, the Hebrew war king, who was both a saint and a sinner, and by others regarded as a god. Hercules had to serve Mycene in the 12 labors, as a slave to receive punishment for his sins. One of these tasks was that he had to steal the golden apples from the Garden of the Hesperides. It shows another side of the myth of the Garden of Eden. The apples could bring eternity, but also strife, as in a descending to the underworld. It worked the same as the Hebrew tree of knowledge. For this Hercules had to approach the god of this garden, which was Atlas, who carried the earth and the heavens on his shoulders, and also the underworlds. Hercules had to take over this job from Atlas in order to get the golden apples, as then Atlas would get them for him. By this Hercules got full possession of the apples. In the root texts of the Hebrew creation story, it is not just a tree, but a box, which can be compared with the box of Pandora. When opened it brought hell, transformation. The curse came free, but curse is not necessarily negative, as also the god of war, Ars, means curse. It is a tool of clearing, security, and a faithful guide on the way, when used carefully and thoughtful, as a medicine. It is a given fact in life that venom, another meaning of the name Ars, Ara, when used properly, it is to save lives. The root texts of the Hebrew creation story showed that the tree of knowledge made of the first man, a servant of the ground, Mother Earth, comparing it with the marriage. Even the Garden of Eden itself, where life began, the word gan, means in depth a defended, fenced garden of a bride, protecting the source of fertility. The first man calls his wife their Chava, mother of beasts, mother of hunger and mother of lust, which is the drive of healthy, natural fertility, untamed and savage. The first man, or tribe, was described as the captive of a natural dirt, afar, which also means swamp, as a captive of Tlazolteotl, the goddess of filth and justice. The act of taking is in the root texts also described as a marriage, and as a capture. That is why the parallel story in the myth of Hercules is so important. A war act is taking place, the god of Ars gets released, and then the Hebrew root texts show that the tribes realize that they are naked, as in a lack of armory, and they start making the armory. Actually, Adam is struck by fear, and the act of hiding, choba, also means becoming hard. In Greek myth, the Gorgons guarded the tree of the golden apples, and whoever saw them turned to stone. Gorgons also represent armor, so this explains why Adam became hard. The Gorgons had a dualistic power, as the double serpent, Kotlik, as from their left side there flew blood to kill, and from their right side, there flew blood to save. The Gorgons also guarded Tartarus, hell, and they were ancient goddesses of wisdom, Libya. So turning into stone by Gorgons can either mean they are arming you, or they just don't want you to come close. Their right side has the power to help people becoming hard for the battle, and their left side is to punish. And either way, they always had to destroy in order to create. Adam reached the Chagor, which was the belt, the bondage, in its roots also meaning fear and trembling. Also this part has parallels in the story of Hercules, as in another labor Hercules has to steal the leather belt of the queen of the Amazons, Hippolyte. This was the belt of Ars, the war god, her father. Hippolyte wanted to give him the belt, but the other Amazons, the predators who are warriors and hunters, also have an atlas task to carry burdens, to bear the underworlds on their shoulders, and this can happen when they get transformed into cattle. It is the call of Mother Earth, also to be bound to her, to serve her. The tree of knowledge and the labors of Hercules represent the same, the path back to the mother womb. This is a very apocalyptic path, as veil's shells have to be cut. In the labor of the Erymanthian, poor Hercules had to bring a wild pig back to Mycene. Pigs are symbolizing the womb, they live in the womb of the earth. It got finally tamed by ice. This is also what the Ragnarok in Viking myth represents. The apocalyptic end scene of darkness and ice is to bring order back in the world of the gods. In Germanic myth, the tree of knowledge was called Yggdrasil, the gallows cross of Odin. It was the path to the underworld, Niflheim or Helheim, where Hel herself ruled, the goddess of fertility. As Hulda she was worshipped as the goddess of marriage. Hulda was also the goddess of hunt, the goddess of children, and she was an ancient Germanic supreme goddess. She was also called the mother of beasts, and of the wilderness, as was Eve, Chava. She worked together with the Huldars, who were ancient hunter goddesses, goddesses of temptation, who lured lost souls into the depths of the underworld, as initiations into the mysteries of hell. They were also the keepers and wardens of hell. In the Hebrew root texts the tree of knowledge was also a gallows, as a sort of paradisic cross, where pilgrims could receive enlightenment. There are two creation stories in Genesis, not just one. The first wife of Adam is described in Jewish myth as Lilith. She did not want to bow for the man, and was sent out of paradise into the wilderness, where she became the devourer of children. We do not have to regard this as negative. She had become an intestine to and through hell, as a holy devouring. The so-called snake of the tree, the gallows, in the Hebrew root text, was in origin an oracle, so it did not mean literal drama. Literalism has always been a form of materialism. In every form the oracle had been condemned to eat dirt, as a way of transformation. This was all through the gallows, by which Odin, the Germanic god, lost his eye, and reached the source of wisdom, Mimir. So it takes an endarkenment to reach an enlightenment from one dimension into the other. In her male form Lilith, the child devourer, was Moloch and Kronos in Greek myth, and Saturn in Roman myth. In Greek myth, she was also called Lamia, a child-stealing earth monster, to take them into the depths of hell. This was all to escape from the patriarchal world, where only men dominated. In this sense hell is the womb again. Adam had to bow to Eve, who led him to Lilith, the oracle again. For him, this was a rebirth. He needed the double goddess, the Coatlicue in Aztec myth, the devourer, in order to make a new creation. The tree of knowledge is a call for the man to return to his female part. This part has to be awakened by the powers of hell, which is her womb. She is the woman laying in the river between the flowers, in the mud, slowly awakening, as she has been deeply locked up in the subconsciousness. The seventh day of creation was in the Hebrew text also a day of destruction, from where a new creation came forth. The male had now to return to his original wife. In the first creation story he was called the Zakar, the bearer of memory, and his wife was called Nekaba, the piercer or expressor, which was the same as what Nachash, the so-called snake, meant, the whisperer, the toxic enchanter, the bringer of future. This was Lilith, and he had to return to it, in which Eve was an important medium. Both male and female. So there was also a fall of Zakar, because he tried to rule over his women. That was the true source of all problems. The tree was really a way to bring balance back again, and to bring the children into a new creation. The suffering was meant to open the deeper senses, and to connect to lost parts of the underworld. It was nothing but deepening the frequencies, digging them out. It is for a man case to find his woman back in this. If there was any sin, it was the sin of Zakar against Nekaba, trying to let her submit to him, in order so that he could rule over her. The tree of knowledge, in this sense, is the tree of restoration. And in this sense Zakar had eaten from a very bad fruit, in the first creation story, as he tried to destroy his mother, Mother Earth. Zakar had to go into bondage because of this, and this was why the element of snake was used as a way to describe the rope, the Sabbath of destruction. The third day of creation was in the root texts, the day of the children. It was all to root out the threat of the patriarchal age. But the third day was but a ghost in the desert of patriarchy. Always would it suffer. The fourth day meant law in its roots, and represented the tree of the knowledge and discernment of good and evil, to which man had to be bound. From here Lilith came forth as a device of punishment and reward. She was a judge, a weapon, and was made so that man could submit to her. The second day had been the day of dirt, and the dirt was good to bring forth the fifth day, which was the day of hunger, the day of Tantalos. The hunger creatures lived in poverty, in the wilderness, but close to nature, and they did not have the grotesque of the patriarchal threat. They were minimalists, and they were under Lilith's law, the fourth day. Zakar was the destroyer of Lilith's law, and made his own. The seventh day was the wrath of Lilith, from which a new creation came forth, the second creation story. The Old Testament should be seen as an esoteric, allegoric guide through the underworld. The sixth day was the day of the hunt. Here the male rebelled against the law of Lilith, the goddess, and through the seventh day one came into the second creation story, the story about the tree of knowledge, which is about how the male finds his way back to the goddess again. It is an allegory describing this journey through the ages, the eighth day. And through the fall, the descending into the underworld, one comes in the ninth day. In every age, there is a patriarchal threat against women, and every age deals with it in its own way. Like in the days of Noah, where the Nephilim, male giants, ruled, the flood could be seen as a revenge of the goddess, meaning her menstruation. In the 10th day Moses can be seen as the restorer of Lilithian law, directing to the Egyptian goddess Mot, the goddess of law. In this 10 days creation cycle, the goddess will always heal herself. The male, who came forth from her, and who is just another part of her, being will return to her, and this all by the power of Nachash, the oracle, which some call the snake, but which in its depth the rope, or Ixtab, the Mayan goddess of the rope, the goddess of the hanged men. It is a temptation no one can resist. We all are driven to the cross, as a return to Lilithian law, the original order of divine matriarchy, the primeval fertility cycle. From there the divine milk streams to make pilgrims an adept in the mysteries of the goddess. Esoterically, every fall is a deeper initiation into this. In Aztec myth, the month Tloxachimocco was the month of starvation and hunger in order to approach the goddess. This period parallels the fifth day period or age of creation, the day of Tantalos. It is Lilith herself opening up her body when one wants to know more about the gnosis. By this communication, there is destruction and recreation, like when the dirty waters Moim were divided, a spot rose new land on which the children could play. The 10th day or period of creation got its peak in the Davidic myths, which was esoterically meaning the restoration of the Lilithian wars, under which the Lilithian gladiators were raised. David had a harem of women, who all reflected different aspects of the goddess. In his psalms he is the Hebrew Orpheus. The goal of Orpheus is to be a medium for Ridis, who he lost to the underworld. The son of David was Solomon, who became famous as the King of Wisdom. In the New Testamentic book of Revelation, a messianic text, it is about that those who have the wisdom will recognize the number 666, the human number, which is a mark for those of the kingdom of the beast. This is not just meant as negative. The riddle goes much deeper, as through the paradox we can go back to the one who had wisdom, Solomon, and his number was indeed 666. It was the number of his throne, and the number of his yearly gold harvest. It is the number of wisdom, and therefore a number connected to the tree of knowledge, as a way of bondage to it. It is a number connecting us to the mother goddess of the wilderness. The number leads us to hell and, through hell in a positive sense, as a way of receiving the hidden wisdom, to find out about the healing qualities of all suffering, thus transcending all separation by the law of paradox and syncretism. All the racial differences will suddenly make sense. We do believe in the eternal war, in that sense, but also in the eternal peace and harmony of all things, from an artistic point of view. The paradox, the contradiction, needs to be held up, needs to be accepted, and then we have to watch the deeper layer of it. The eternal gospel says that even the spirits of God fight each other in order to give birth and create. It is a divine game. Receiving the mark of the mother of beasts is a Solomonic miracle. It is the creation of land in the midst of the wasteland in the depths of Ben Hinnom. When the goddess hunts after us, and marks us, 3 times the 6th day, the day of hunt, which is 3 times to enter the 3rd day, the day of the children. The Yom Shilishi is also the fork, the triad. In this, the wisdom is revealed to children. It is the day of Zerah, which not only means seed, children, but in its roots, it means also scattering. The Solomonic mark of Lilith is the mark of marriage to the goddess, the original meaning of hell, as a fertility mark. It is the mark to have further access in her. In Jewish myth and gnosis, there were 3 angels who had to bring Lilith back to Adam. Lilith made these angels as a sign of salvation for whoever had these angels imprinted. These 3 angels were the embodiment of the Lilithian mark, Senoi, Sansenoi and Simangalof, 3 times S, SSS. These were the angels of medicine, so the mark had in-depth healing qualities. Also Eve was a mighty medium in bringing Adam back to Lilith, and she as well can be seen as the mark of the mother of beasts. The beast in the Messianic book of Revelation, in the New Testament, can also be translated as a savage, which is the primeval repressed age of matriarchy, as a woman rides the beast. She is called a whore, but this can also mean the sacred prostitute. There is an image of the beast, the savage life, which has to be worshipped. In the root texts, here this image means empty space, nothingness, as a space of detachment, and the worship of it means to kiss and lick. It was the situation before the first creation story, as the 10th day, waiting to switch over to the first day again. In this apocalyptic situation, one either had to receive the mark or die. She is described as the mother of filth and mystery, relating her to the Aztec goddess of sin, Tlazolteotl, who was nothing but a goddess of justice. They are dualistic gods. The power of the Aztec pantheon was always the duality, as in this problems could be solved, mysteries could be interpreted, and negativity and sin could be transformed, as a dirt eater. The dirty whore was a sign of Tlazolteotl's rule, as she was the savage mother, and she came with strategy. She brought people within her temptation in order to show a way out. She was the representative of the age of confusion, in which the order of the goddess would be visible. In the root texts, the one who had these visions, John, admired this woman. There was written something on her forehead as a mark, which in the root text not just says, the mother of the secret doctrine, but also the mother as the source, the well, the motherland meter. Then she conquers as the bride. The mystery of the whore of Babylon was that she was a duality of syncretism, the guard of the secrets, the root texts, and the esotery of it. She was the tester in order to become a proper justice goddess, as a keeper of the mark. Therefore she can be seen as the day of Tlazolteotl, the fourth day of law. She had created the dirt, she had created the mark, and also the solution. Therefore she was an important part in the cycle of Sophia. The mark is for the shaman a way to enter into the depths of hell. The mark has 3 parts, 3 being the number of children, the triad. In Greek myth, Cerberus was the initiator of hell, a 3-headed dog. We have to be pierced by the 4 to enter hell, the sign of fertility. The woman in her restored form, Sophia, is the piercer, to awaken us to the deeper interpretations by synthesis. It is the work of the weaver. In this, we can finally make a solid ground in hell, and build a utopia. All things finally come at peace with each other, even through the art of eternal war. The beast was put in power by Draken, a mythological monster, in the root text, also a watcher. The mark can be seen as a divine inspirator, a device of communication and law, as the guard of hell. The mark is meant to bring the duality inside of us, the synthesis. Coatlicue is the Aztec double-headed goddess of hunt, as the portal to the underworld, and therefore she guards the 6th day, the day of hunt. The mark came to proportions when Moses received the Lilithian laws in 2 tablets, and where he received the horns, or rays of light. Also the duality of the Ark of the Covenant refer to this, as a device to have communication with the Egyptian goddesses, which it originally was. Akar was in this, the double god, as the guard of the Egyptian underworld. In the root texts, the tablets of law were to monitor and warn its receivers, Lichithdit, as a security device. In Aztec myth, the double god is also named Umteotl. Related to this, we can also mention the double goddess of the Greek underworld, Medusa, or her and her 2 sisters being the gods of the underworld, as the 3 Gorgons. From them, 2 sorts of blood flew, 1 stream for salvation, and 1 stream for damnation. They were the judges of the underworld. In the esoteric Gnostic movement, Charigma is the 3-headed goddess of communication. When someone watched the Gorgons, they turned into stone, they became hard. Sometimes this was for warrior armor purpose, to raise an army. That is what the mark, in depth, is all about. It is also related to the Adamic Heracles, receiving of the belt. In the Messianic book of Ephesus, this belt is described as the belt of truth, which is the goddess Aletheia in the esoteric Gnosis. The breastplate of justice is the goddess Dikaiosune. The goddess Pistis, faith, is merely in the root text's tax system, or Moses was driven by the double Egyptian goddess by who he was saved. In the split, the sea of Moses could create the wilderness holding the promised land, the land of Lilith. In this sea there was a dimensional shift going on in the underworld, leading them in deeper. The island of Lilith leads back to her source, the Sophia. Sophia herself rules over the second day, the day of filth, as the revealer. The first day, the day in which duality was created, was the day of meter. Everything was divided into time, and that's why she became the goddess of time. The goddess Pistis, faith, was also the goddess of hunger and tax, and ruled over the fifth day, the day of Tantalos. In the esoteric gnosis, the Sea of Moses, in the underworld was surrounded by Egypt. In this sea in another dimension, there was the island of Lilith, representing the earth core, and South America. One has to enter this island, to search for the sources of Sophia. Polis is the goddess of war, and all the initiations build up to be able to access her arena, her city, the eternal war. Everything is preserved in this. The 10th day is the day of the abyss, the age of war, ruled by Polis. It is where the Lilithian eternal wars are restored. Under David, Polis raises warriors, gladiators. Through the Lilithian wars, under David the Solomonic wisdom came forward as the wings of Sophia. The sword of David was the key to open this temple, the temple of 666, the number of Solomonic wisdom and rule. The key of Solomon can be used to open the 6th day, the day of hunt, the temple of Kotliku. Then the balance between hunt and war will be restored as the two servants of law in order to raise a divine tax system. There will also be a balance between law and tax between Tlazolteotl and Pistis. And then the key of further esoteric syncretic alchemy will rise. From the day of Sophia, the split in the menstruation blood, a children's world will rise, the world of truth, guarded and guided by Alethea. Law and tax are her servants, but these are all parts of Sophia. She is the elixir of eternal life. The tree in the paradise represented the female cross, to return to the goddess by initiations, and to have access in the underworld. In Inca myth this is called the Chicana. In Mayan myth, the goddess of the gallows, the goddess of the hanging, is Ixtab, as a guide through the underworld. The terrible overfocus on male gods has repressed the goddesses. It has repressed childhood, but goddess worship has stayed throughout the ages. The Chicana, the Inca cross, has 3 parts, as key to the underworld. The Chicana means to cross. It has 12 corners, representing the cycle of time. It is important to restore the female cross, the female initiation device, as it is our fertility. The Christic element has been overrated, while the female cross became a box of Pandora. Those who follow the esoteric syncretic path will find back the goddess in all her glory. They are willing to suffer in order to see her secrets, that which was hidden. They have just awoken, and they don't want to get lulled into sleep again. They rather feel burdened and pain than nothing at all. They want to feel the heart of the goddess. They want to enter her womb again, to become child again, to escape from the adult world with their economic games of death. They have awoken from death in order to face the depths of hell, her fertility secrets, and the marriage to her. The Christic element has plagued them in their dreams, focusing the attention on the male all the times, the sufferer, instead of the law of suffering, the initiation truths. This was why they first had to switch over to the Christic females, in order to come to the source, the law itself, as the truths of fertility. And so the female part got thrown out of the park of the male body to stay outside, and only the man was allowed to enter her. This is a very tragic and sad story. It all started with the destruction of the female breast, and the framing of her genitals, in order for the male to let his muscles grow to store there the stolen female powers. The female was the warrior part of the male, but the fallen male powers exchanged it for business, money. Money is another fallen male power, which stored stolen female power. The age of Mercury has led to this, in which Zakar, the very first Adam, robbed Lilith, the first Eve, of her cyclic power in order to rule over her. she either fled, or was put out of the garden, as she didn't want to submit to her husband in that way. She was supposed to be his weapon, and his strategic mind, also to initiate him, as to protect him from losing his childhood. She had to open him up to the secrets, to reveal herself to him as the goddess. But Zakar was not open for that. In myth this led to the castration of Zakar Mercury. A male must allow the goddess to pierce him in order to return to his childhood memory again, and to the esoteric depths of it. This in order that he will not rule over the goddess by his dormant fallen male power. Her tree in the paradise means the carpenter in the root texts, as she is the one who has to construct the man by her initiations. The fallen male power could get the rule because the male was sabotaging his child part, so it is important to travel back to the third day of creation, the age of the children. The child part had always been the interpreter in the male, a translator, as a bridge. This part was put over him also, under the guide and guard of the goddess. The divine hierarchy. The goddess on top. Then the divine child. Then the male. In this, the divine child functions as a mark through which the goddess communicates with the man. The power of the man is a potentially very dangerous power, which can bring deceptive illusions. This is why the man has to stay under the rule of the goddess and the divine child. If not, then there will be revenge in the form of Lilithian wars, until everything is balanced again. It is for ages that Lilith has raged against the authoritarian patriarchs, and she has with success exposed their lies. In this age she will continue to reveal her secrets to the mystery schools. Only with respect and honor to the goddess and the divine child, which is the symbol of truth, a male can come to his purpose. In syncretism he has to find these parts back in himself, and to awaken them. Mercury is a terrible poison, much used in the medical world, to symbolize the fallen nature of the unbound male, separated from his goddess part, and his divine child part. By this the male lives in the illusion of power, control and riches. But the truth is that he has been castrated from his divine vision. The nipple represented the menstruation cycle, also in the male. The muscle represented the Mercurian cycle, also further represented by money. When Zakar fell into the Shabbat, the age of sleep, he had eaten from the mercurial fruit to get power over his wife. That was the promise, but it was a trap, and he fell asleep, and the destruction of Lilith came over him. The male is still often in this elusive sleep, induced by the mercurial serpent. The goddess is the only way out when he finds his divine child back. He has to be reborn in her womb in the 8th day. The 7th day, the wrath of Lilith, is in the root text, the day of rest, joy and destruction. It is a trap set by the goddess to deceive those who try to quench her, inducing sleep. It is the realm of Bacchus, the Roman trickster god. In this illusion people follow the lies of a false media Mercury. So how to transmute? The mercurial veils in the temple of Sophia are shifting like mills. How to deprogram the mercurial mind? It is by discovering Sophia's arc, the polis, which is the ruler of the 10th day, in her temple. The polis is an arena, the eternal war, the ultimate protection and immunity. It is related to a classic suffering, a necessary disease, as a fire in which the laws of Sophia, the Lilithian laws, have been revealed. It is the shockers on our hearts to warn us when there is danger. It is a system of alarms, working by fire. Polis is the heart of Sophia, the maker of dirt, to reveal the purity. Through her arc we get access to the underworld of children, the world of Aletheia, truth. In this process we get reunited with the divine child and the goddess. The economic and monetary veils are a part of the mercurial veils, same as the muscular veils. But with the help of the divine child, you will get through. There are also the veils of media, and that is why it is important to learn to communicate with the goddess, in order to quench these voices. The goddess speaks by lights and visions, but she can also speak by darkness. It is important to learn how to recognize her voice, and to discern it from the others. The ways of money were to simulate fertility in a venomous way by those who were castrated, but in this, the true fertility will be revealed. Sophia has ways to imprint her laws. She is